Welcome to Feminized. It's time for a show that turns the spotlight on the powerful women shaping cannabis culture. The cannabis industry is on fire and women are sparking it up. If you like the show, please subscribe. You can also subscribe to the Feminized podcast with Liz Grow on YouTube and Instagram. The future is feminized. My next guest is known as a Texas Cannabis Shieldmaiden, and it's safe to say that I would not be as passionate of an advocate without her guidance. Heather Fazio is the Director of Texans for Responsible Marijuana Policy, where she drives real cannabis progress in this state. She's also a director at Young Americans for Liberty. This podcast comes at a particularly important time, as it's the day before primary elections in the state of Texas, and we have so much work to do. Please welcome my inspiration and my good friend, Heather Fazio. Hey, sis. You're now listening to the Feminized podcast. All right. Heather Fazio, welcome to the Feminized podcast. Heather, I'm so excited to have you here. As I've called you, as Patrick and I have referred to you many times, you are the Texas Cannabis Shieldmaiden. You were the person who inspired us to just get active, get our hands dirty, pick up the phones, knock on doors. And it's just, I'm thrilled to have you here on the Feminized podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity, all the support, and activism. You know, we lead by example, not by so much what we say, but what we do. And y'all are certainly walking the walk while you talk the talk. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate you.
Thank you. So as Director of Texans for Responsible Marijuana Policy, can you give us a high level on kind of your day-to-day and what your roles and responsibilities are?
Sure. Well, we're now an entirely volunteer-run organization, and I had been working full-time with the group for a long time, many years on marijuana policy, and boy, we move the ball in the right direction over these years, working with so many great people. And now it's a volunteer position. I now am working with Young Americans for Liberty through the Hazlitt Coalition, which is actually, so Texans for Responsible Marijuana Policy is a coalition organization in and of itself. We have about 25 different organizations that we work with, trying to bridge the gap, the partisan gap that we often feel, and helping to bring people together where we agree. Marijuana policy is supported by Texans of all political affiliations. And so we look to create that umbrella. And the Hazlitt Coalition happens to have already been one of our coalition members, so I'm excited to be working with Young Americans for Liberty and the Hazlitt Coalition now.
That's incredible. I just, it's the path that you're on is just it's fascinating for us to follow. It really is, because you are someone who's made it your career to influence policy and educate lawmakers about cannabis and about all of the benefits and about how they're misinformed. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, how does one even find themselves in that position?
Sure. Well, I've gone from banners and bullhorns to registered lobbyists. So things have certainly changed over the last 12, 13 years that I've been involved in advocacy. And it all started as a volunteer, getting involved, finding out where I can pass out flyers and finding out leaders on issues that I care about and helping to support them in different ways, going to the Capitol. Much like this legislative session was first for y'all, and coming in and finding out, learning the ropes, getting involved. That was me in 2009, going for the very first time, and trying to figure out, how does this work? How do I engage and effectively? I mean, that's the most important part. A lot of us want to rage against the machine justifiably. But how can we be effective in getting the policy changes that are necessary for making us freer? And so when it comes to marijuana policy, obviously there's a lot of challenges that we have to face, stigma to overcome. Yeah. But thankfully, more and more people are getting involved. They're not afraid to speak truth to power. They're not afraid to talk about the research that they found, which contradicts what the government says, and trying to find reconciliation there. So, I'm in the grassroots department now. I'm continuing empowering others and getting folks involved.
Yes. Awesome. And some of the ways that you do that, I think, are so clever, like truly. Obviously, first and foremost, it's just the ability to break down really, kind of complex jargon and the processes and the tangled web of the political framework. But what you do is you make it very, very simple for simpletons like me and Patrick, and just, regular folks who don't make it their lives to follow policy, and to really reach our lawmakers. So before we get into kind of what's going on and how we're kind of heating up for the Texas primaries, could you just talk a little bit about the best tips and tricks that you can give people who want to get involved in Texas cannabis advocacy?
Sure. Well, the number one thing that you can do is educate yourself. There is a ton of information and a lot of moving parts. Things are changing very quickly. So,
sorry. I feel like if I don't smoke on my podcast, then I'm not living my truth.
Well, you're making it a good morning. I like that.
That's right. And you know me, Heather.
Yeah. Well, lost my train of thought there.
What sorry.
We're talking about?
We're talking about policy tips. So for people who want to get involved.
Yeah. So number one, educating yourself. And so not only on who your legislator is, where the Capitol is, where to park when you go, those kinds of statistics, but on your issue, to make sure that you have the latest information that's available to share with lawmakers, because so often lawmakers are not necessarily against what we're trying to do. They just are uninformed, and giving them that information is going to give them that confidence in a direction that we want. So, make sure you know what is the latest on the compassionate use program. How many patients are participating? Is it working? What is the bottom line of decriminalization or enforcement in your area? Every major metro area has a different program. How is it working in your area? And does it call for statewide? We need the lawmakers to go further. So making sure you know your subject matter, know who represents you. We have our voter registration card, which talks about every district that we're going to be voting in. Each of those districts represents an official, a public official that is representing you on that body. So you need to know, what is your school board doing? What does the state legislature do versus what the congressional legislature does? State level policy versus federal level policy. So I would take time to reach out to advocacy organizations, find out what's on their website. We have Texans for Responsible Marijuana Policy. Our website is texasmarijuanapolicy.org. Another fantastic tool is the Foundation for an Informed Texas. This nonprofit has done a tremendous job of creating a catalog of information, of webinars, of these different pieces of digital content that allow you to better how these policies are working. And so informtexas.org is their website. You can find their catalog there to kind of catch up on where we're at, and so that you can be ready when the legislature convenes in less than a year from now, and we can hit the ground running.
I love that. So it's informtexas.org. I'm making a little flag right now. I love Informed Texas. What's cool about that resource, Heather, is that it's different than Texans for Responsible Marijuana Policy. And so it's not as if there's competing nonprofits. There are a lot of nonprofits out there. There are a lot of groups working to help legalize, push the agenda forward. But you got to, you scratch beneath the surface, I think, do research on, who's running those organizations. And it's just the superstars really at Informed Texas and Texans for Responsible Marijuana Policy. It's the superstars, the people that are inspiring others to start nonprofits. You and Jax.
Yeah, well, and Feminized, right? Feminized, that's what the foundation did, is education. We need people to understand the issue so that they can support the cause.
Absolutely. So what do you say? What's your answer to people when they ask you, so when are we going to be legal in Texas?
Well, the sooner the better, obviously. And, we operate in 2-year cycles in Texas. And so our legislature only meets every 2 years. We met in 2021, and we were successful in expanding the compassionate use program to add PTSD as a qualifying condition, to add all cancer patients, not just terminal cancer patients, as qualifiers under TCUP or the Texas Compassionate Use Program. And so we met in 21, and the next time we meet is in 2023. Now, we were not successful in getting decriminalization passed last time. So Texas is going to have to take that step. recognizing that we should no longer be arresting peaceful people for the possession of a plant that's objectively safer than alcohol, objectively safer than tobacco, and frankly, many of the prescription drugs that pay every day. And so we have to take that first step, and we can continue working towards that in 2023. The next time after that, though, isn't until 2025. So we have to make every legislative session count and get what we can passed. And this last session, we did come close to reducing penalties for possession of concentrates, which I hope everyone knows, but I don't think they do, is that concentrates are a felony in Texas. Any amount of oil, any amount of infused edible product is a felony in Texas. Now, opinions are changing. District attorneys do not want their felony courts stacked up with cases. It's absurd. They have real bad guys to go after. And that's what we heard from the Texas District and County Attorney Association. Last session, we had a bill that passed the House and passed the Senate, and unfortunately got caught up in a web of nonsense with regard to the Delta 8 issue, because the government seems to want to, especially Dan Patrick, or wants to cling to prohibition rather than accepting the fact that this product is available widely. People are enjoying it. They're using it responsibly. And what we need to do is institute regulation. And that, I think, is how we are coming to the point of legalization. Unlike other states which decriminalize medical cannabis, then legalization, point where it is possible that we skip right over decrim and just institute a legal market, because that's what makes sense.
Yes,
New hope.
that is what makes sense. That is what makes sense. God, new hope. And, another thing that you've helped us to see, you and your colleagues, of course, have helped us to see is how much money Texan taxpayers are paying enforcing low-level marijuana possession or, possession of a concentrate. Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, I love tapping into your brain. It's like a data center.
Yeah. Well, and I'll encourage folks to go and look at the educational exhibits that we put together during the last legislative session. Lots of these tidbits together, because we like packaging information in a way that's relevant and makes sense and can be used in the future. So on Facebook, our page, Texans for Responsible Marijuana Policy, we have an album with all of those graphics, so you can go check it out. And where you'll find that Texas is spending hundreds of millions of dollars a year to continue enforcing their failed policies of marijuana prohibition. Now, thankfully, localities, local district attorneys, county attorneys, law enforcement are starting to make changes. And we've seen the numbers of arrests fall significantly, which is wonderful. However, they are not going to be able to get it done locally when it comes to the end goal. We have to institute statewide policy. So, we still are arresting tens of thousands of people. It's not the 70,000 they were arresting when we first started doing this work. We're down into the, just low tens of thousands that they are arresting now. But there's still tens of thousands of people who are having their lives derailed. Tens of thousands of court cases which are getting the attention that domestic violence cases should be getting. And this is the message we deliver to lawmakers every time we have the opportunity. And we need to grow our base and have more messengers delivering that to state lawmakers, and local ones as well.
Oh, God, yes. Every time I talk to you, it's like a fire is just relit inside. And something that you said was just, it hit me so deeply that, we're tens of thousands of cases being heard for cannabis, okay? When how many hundreds of thousands of domestic violence cases do we have in Texas? I say hundreds of thousands because we're almost 30 million people, okay? That's just the way it goes. And we love our alcohol in Texas. So we do have just an overwhelming, I'm sure our courts are overwhelmed with domestic violence cases. I was a domestic violence case way back in the day. And just thinking about the lives that are ruined by cannabis offenses and the lives that are ruined by domestic violence. One of them is the state is the perpetrator. Okay, the other is a human that needs to be taken care of. It's one human versus the state as the perpetrator. Right. It's just, it really, I at that time in my life, I really saw the government in a different way. And man, it's like Texans, I feel like if more Texans heard this message, if they knew this, they took a minute to think, I think they would 100% get on board. And not only support Texans for responsible marijuana policy, Texas normal, informed Texas, but start the conversation within their own communities, within their own families. You know, just talking to your husband or your wife or your partner or your kids or your coworkers about how is it 2021 and when we're still doing this? You know,
yeah, I mean? Well, and senior citizens are the fastest growing demographic of cannabis users. So don't be afraid to talk to Uncle Joe. Don't be afraid to talk to your parents about this issue, because many of them are curious. They need information, and there's a lot of it out there. So how can we help to get them what they need when it comes to understanding the issue better, so they can maybe evolve on the policies, but also maybe they need it. Maybe it'll benefit them.
It will benefit them.
Yeah.
Okay. Just going to go on the record here.
Yeah.
I'm not a doctor, but I think it will benefit them.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, just the expansion of the mind. Just not even consuming it, but knowing that it's there and it's a viable option.
Yeah, and if not for using it themselves and benefiting from it as a taxpayer in this country, a lot of people are concerned about the way we utilize our resources. The vast majority, and when I say vast, I mean more than 90% of burglaries go unsolved in the state of Texas because we are not prioritizing our resources. That means tax dollars are being wasted on something that people don't even think should be a crime to begin with. And, as our friend Martin Luther King Jr. has to say, is that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so we have to continue working to make sure that our system works, because America is the greatest country that has ever existed for human flourishing. We have our flaws, but we can do better. And that is what this grassroots advocacy is all about, is harnessing that power that is enshrined in the Constitution, that is enshrined in the principles and the values of this country when it comes to self-governance and participation in your governance. And that's what this is about. We're focused on marijuana policy here, but boy, and I don't have to tell you how much attention this country needs from the people of this country to actually exert their power, to talk about their values, and to insist that we have a government that accurately reflects our morals and values.
I'll smoke to that, babe.
Here's to that, right?
Amazing. Absolutely. And if, nowhere in that message is, we want weed, just give us weed. We just want more weed. Some of the most passionate cannabis advocates I know don't smoke a lot. Or they don't use a lot of THC, and it's for whatever their reasons are. Maybe sometimes it's just they're too damn busy. But we're asking for freedom of to choose our medicine and to grow our medicine.
Yeah, yes, exactly right. And as we evolve, people don't need as much THC as they maybe thought they did. So they could use cannabis through the day, where it's going to benefit them in different ways, where they don't feel like, oh, I can't do this at work. Well, if you tried maybe one of the lower THC products, it may be able to help you in that way, because terpenes are so valuable. The other cannabinoids are so powerful.
Yes, CBG. Oh my God. I mean, listen, we don't know what's in my little bowl here. Okay. Typically it is THC. Right now I've got a little CBG and CBD.
Yeah.
But it's all cannabis. It's hemp. It's marijuana. It's the cannabinoids. We're humans. They're made for us.
Yes, that's right. And wellness, and that's, kind of, I guess, circling back to the topic of conversation or the overall theme that you have here is, Feminized podcast, is women getting involved. And the way we talk about this from that nurturing, positive, feminine energy really matters. And it really is having an impact on the way that other people, including men who have historically been in positions of power, are viewing this issue. And I'll tell you, one organization that really opened the door on medical cannabis was an organization called MAMA, Mothers Advocating Medical Marijuana for Autism. And these moms are so powerful when they go in and they talk about their families. They talk about their children. They talk about their households and the well-being that they deserve and that they could find with cannabis if it was allowed to them. And I just can't say enough good things about the moms that came and walked the halls of the Capitol and knocked on doors and had these hard heart-to-heart conversations. It matters. It goes a long way, and we need more of it.
Oh my God, absolutely. We need more of it. And you know what's a stronger driver than really the love for your child? It's there is no stronger driver than that. And these women are so brave. You know, I mean, just imagine, especially early on, the resistance they were met with, the sneers, and even the jokes, even the people who are supporters, they still can get a little cheeky when it comes to, cannabis puns and jokes and things like that, and the Cheech and Chong references. And, it's like they've endured all of that. They pushed through because what's the other option, And because of that, it's really helped those of us who don't have children suffering,
Yeah. Well, and we have to meet people where they are. And if where they are is making a pot brownie joke in a legislative office, it doesn't feel great. Luckily, that's not happening as often as it did. But at the same time, they are not condemning it. They are not standing there saying that, no, you actually should go to jail and I'm going to call CPS. Yeah. And that is how far we've come to where we can talk about that. Now we sit down with them and we have a serious conversation so that they know it isn't just about jokes and getting high. This is about wellness. This is about healing. And this is about justice.
Oh, amen. Amen. And we deserve it. We all deserve it.
That's right.
Okay, Heather. So before we wrap up, there are 3 questions that I like to ask all of my guests. Okay. So the first question, and they're not necessarily quick fire, but first question. Tell me who is in your dream smoke circle. You get 3 people. So it's you and 3 others, dead or alive, whether they smoke or not. And you can tell me about your smoke circle too. If it's not smoking, if it's a gummy bite. I don't know.
Okay. Well, I don't know if any of these people would use cannabis.
That's okay. That's okay.
But I heard, the story again was told of Mr. Clarkson and Mr. Wilberforce. These were people that were heads of the abolition movement in Europe, particularly in England. And so I would have to say that William Wilberforce is someone that is a hero of mine, and is the subject of a movie called Amazing Grace. Highly recommend it for anyone who, not only advocates, but just in general. Amazing story about the abolition of the slave trade in Europe, and of course that kicked off the abolition in the whole world, honestly. And so he was an advocate through and through, and he wore himself down to the bone on this issue for 20 years. 20 years he fought for something as obvious as the abolition of the slave trade. So let that be encouragement and something to be optimistic about, is that we are not going to have to fight 20 years. We are standing on the shoulders of those in the cannabis movement for decades behind us. And we get to be there when we cross the finish line. So William Wilberforce is someone for sure that is on my list. Now, someone more recently that impacted me is, there's a picture of me and him right there, me and Dr. Braunfels.
Oh, yes. Do you know I took Veronica to a Ron Paul rally when she was 18 months old?
18
and
months?
I had this little shirt for her, and it was a revolution with the love. Yes.
I love it. I love it. So I don't know if he uses cannabis, but I want to hear the war stories. I want to hear, all of because I think that we're in the midst of a modern revolution.
How do you do?
People are dissatisfied on both sides. They want to get active and get involved, which is why I've been so grateful for the opportunities that I've had to inform people on the civic process. So regardless of, where you're at, we're talking about cannabis now, but where are we going to be in 2, 3, 5, 10, 50 years from now? It's going to be largely impacted by our ability to be involved in the system. So Dr. Paul, of course, is on my list. And then another Texan who was very inspiring to me when I first got involved, helping me to recognize that there are good people operating within a very dark and ugly system that is often talked about as being broken, but it is actually quite efficient at what the people who designed it intended it to do. And so this is David Simpson, who is from Northeast Texas. He is he might be mortified that I would even suggest that we smoke weed together. But
It's an honor,
But I appreciate
David, it's
him
an honor,
so
I
much. Yes.
promise.
And, he actually introduced the very first bill in 2015 that would have repealed marijuana prohibition. And he said, God didn't make a mistake that government needs to fix. And he is a very conservative Christian man. And, we can find overlap on that, on the fact that this is something that is natural. This is part of this earth, as are we. And so I really appreciated the work that he did on introducing that bill, which would have regulated cannabis, like he always said, like jalapenos. Because jalapenos are self-regulating.
I love this person. I love David Simpson. I'm going to have to do some research.
Yeah, well, and he's just a man of integrity also. And so, whether or not you agree with him on something, that he's being honest with you and forthcoming and willing to have that conversation. And that's the kind of leadership that we need in government at every level. So I'm just so grateful for David Simpson, for Ron Paul, and of course, a historical figure, William Wilberforce.
Oh my God, what an epic smoke circle. Wow, to be a fly on the wall. Yeah. Okay, second question. So it is a feminized podcast. I'm only having women on because that's what I want. And girl talk, I love it. Who's another woman who's killing it in the cannabis advocacy space, or in the game, as I like to say? But who's another woman inspiring you right now?
Well, this one's easy as fuck. Jax Finkel, my girl. I mean, she's been doing this work for so long. She has been nailing it. And she has evolved through this. I mean, rising to the occasion through the Foundation for an Informed Texas during the pandemic, where usually we host live events all the time. We do traveling advocacy training events. We weren't able to do a lot of what we do to build the grassroots and to engage with our base. And she just rose to the occasion, started doing virtual events, doing these virtual trainings and webinars and speaker series, and has just been a tremendous advocate, and doing it in a way that welcomes people of all political affiliations, of all abilities. She's very mindful about meeting people where they are and helping to bring them in. So definitely my hero in the movement is Jax. We've been friends for a long time, and I'm really grateful to have been able to work so closely with her on marijuana policy.
Oh, absolutely. You guys are the dynamic duo. Incredible. I got to talk to her a couple days ago, so I'm excited for you to hear that conversation as well, and excited for her to hear this. I know she'll appreciate that. All right, so last question is, it's an easy one. So what message would you give 13-year-old Heather about how to really thrive in today's society?
Oh, that's kind of cutting deep. 13 years old. So how old are you when you're 13? That's like 7th grade, 7th, 8th grade.
8th grade, yeah.
Oh, okay. So first of all, breathing and sitting in your own identity and power is so important, because we're often racing to get through this life that other people have created for us and expectations, and we don't get a chance to identify with ourselves and who we are. And so I would say that know who you are, know what you want to do, and do it.
Do you think she didn't at the time?
No, I was very different when I was young. I grew up in a very authoritarian type household, and expectations were to go to school, go to college, you get married, you work, you retire, and you die. Like, that's just what life is. And there is, like, yes, those are beautiful milestones and big accomplishments, oftentimes with career and school. But wow, there is so much more that we can tap into spiritually. And, I think I'm grateful that wasn't a spirit breaker for me. Because I'll tell you, Ron Paul inspired the fact that it is okay to want to rage against the machine. It is okay to be a rabble rouser. It is okay to speak truth to power. And it is okay to be who you are, to have the fortitude to be who you are. And we need more of that kind of authenticity, because so often we're teaching kids to just be in boxes and to fit into this corporate structure so you can get a good job and have a good retirement. And while those things are important for being able to accomplish your goals and have the resources to do what you want, there also is so much more spiritually to who we are. You know, I was
Yes.
reminded recently that we are not humans, you know, earthly beings having spiritual experiences. We are spiritual beings having this biological human experience on this earth right now. And what a beautiful thing that we are all here at the same time, and that we can gravitate towards each other and we can
Yes.
empower each other and we can work together for good.
Oh, so beautiful. Absolutely. Well, gosh, 13-year-old Heather, who knew that you would turn out to be this world changer? Um, Man, I'm sure I'm glad you are, and you are here, and that we got in your orbit. So last question before we close. It's not really even a question, but I'd ask, would you kind of paint a picture of cannabis in the future?
Yeah.
In the future.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think that prohibition made cannabis a much bigger deal than it ever needed to be. It really isn't something that needs to be controversial. It's something that was in the medicine cabinets of many, many households before prohibition really sunk its teeth in. And so I think the future is where, you know, cannabis is just something that's available. People know how to use it responsibly, and it ends up being not that big of a deal for the vast majority of us. Of course, that is certainly not the case for the many patients, their
Yeah.
caregivers, and their families whose
Yeah.
lives are dramatically improved by cannabis, by getting government out of the way of the doctor-patient relationship and allowing them to identify if and how cannabis can help them to thrive. And so I see a future where things are much more peaceful, especially when it comes to cannabis, but ideally we are more peaceful in the future, and we're able to live and let live. And we're able to get this government under control and really see a future where we are all represented, where we are all valued, and where we all participate in our own governance.
I mean, I think that's the perfect way to end this conversation, Heather. You are a constant light and a constant inspiration to me. I hope you'll join me again. You're never going to be rid of us, Patrick and I. I can speak for him
Good.
as well when I tell you that you really do inspire us, and I'm grateful for you. So go on and take on your day, girl. Do
Thank
what
you,
you
thank
do.
you, thank you. Well, I'm looking forward to the future as well. I'm happy to be working with y'all in the upcoming Texas Cannabis Policy Conference, which we're hosting at Texas A&M. And the future is bright. So I know that we will be crossing paths and continuing to work together. So thank you, thank Patrick, and thanks for the audience for tuning in.
Oh, absolutely. Wait, before we jump off, because I know we have 2 more minutes.
Great.
Texas Policy Conference. Talk to me about it quickly. Sorry. Or
Yeah,
not quickly, whatever.
Sure. So we are really excited to be hosting this annual conference. Well, last year was last year, of course. But this is our annual big policy conference. And while there are other trade shows and conferences that happen around the country, this is really about policy, about advocacy, and about the legal changes that have to happen. But we are expanding to having other types of content. For example, because we're hosting at A&M with the sponsorship of their soil and crop department, which is they're the ones leading on the hemp research that's happening at A&M. Not only field research with crops across the state, they are doing lab research on genetics. And I'm so grateful to be working with them. And so we're going to hear from the researchers. We're going to hear from people who work in the industry on how other people can get involved. So on our website, texascannabisconference.org, we have our sessions listed now with our agenda. Registration is open with early bird pricing. And we are just so grateful for all of our sponsors, all of the speakers that have committed already to coming. And this is going to be a great event. So it's happening March 4th through the 6th. And actually Friday night, the night of our reception, we're going to have Chris Harris and Will Hudson. They're attorneys who created a little song called Don't Eat Your Weed, which is funny, right? It is funny, but it's also informative, because if you eat your weed, then you are escalating the problem into tampering with evidence. And that is a bigger problem than just having weed. So I appreciate their approach to informing the public about issues like this. And so they're going to be joining us on Friday night to play their jingles. You can find them on YouTube if you're interested in checking it out in advance. But we're really looking forward to this event, March 4th through 6th, texascannabisconference.org.
Yes. Oh, I'm so excited. And Grow House Media will be a supporting sponsor. So I know all of the pieces are being put together now, but I'm just really thrilled to be a part of it and get some really solid promotion on this event, because I think this is an event that people from outside of Texas should be joining as well. If you're interested in the national cannabis economy, you should absolutely come and learn. So that's my plug.
Yeah, as goes Texas, so goes the nation. So we got some catching up to do.
That's right. Well, Heather, thank you again for your time this morning. Join me again, definitely, before the conference, before primaries, before all the exciting things that we have going on in Texas, okay?
Absolutely. Thanks, Liz.
All right. Talk soon, Heather.
Bye.
Bye. If you'd like more, subscribe to the Feminized podcast on YouTube. Follow at Feminized with Liz Grow on Instagram. Special thanks to our sponsors, Moose Labs and Richard's Rainwater. The Feminized podcast is a Grow House Media production, created by Liz Grow, produced by Patrick Pope and Tanis Ray, with original theme music and audio mixing by Q at Q to King Productions in New Braunfels, Texas.